Look at that. My camera can't focus the way the Mets can't focus. The way the Mets cannot lock in. The way the Mets simply cannot show any competence on the offensive or pitching end that we call these baseball games. Let me get this thing focused, and then we'll get rolling, everybody. You all know I have a lot to say. Give me 1 second. Okay. There we go. Alrighty, guys. This is not like yesterday. So let's get everything started there. Yesterday, Wardy was as hot-headed, as ranty as one can be. I'm exhausted. I got no sleep last night. You know, it was a short night with the little one. And I'm here to tell you that I'm just exhausted watching this Mets team after a game like this. So, in tonight's breakdown, our latest post-game show presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. Check them out tonight by using promo code YouTube150. That way, you too get a 150% bonus on your first deposit and then 125 on your following two for a total of 3 for all your sports betting needs. I'm here to tell you that the Mets are not only free-falling right now, but they are rolling over and dying before our very eyes. A Mets team that has been resilient, as Steve Cohen famously tweeted pregame today, believe in the boys, they're going to get a run here. They are as resilient as ever. Could be farther from the truth in this latest disaster class that you call an outing by the Mets, as they are, and you will hear some profanity here, so earmuffs, kiddos. I'll give you a 3, 2, 1 countdown, a 3, a 2, a 1. A absolute no fucking show against the Milwaukee Brewers. So many similarities from this going back to March, in which the Mets absolutely floundered. They got destroyed by Milwaukee at home for the Mets to kickstart their season 0-5. We fast forward all the way to the season's end, all the way to what was initially supposed to be, on paper, the final series for the Mets this season. And what do we have? We have deja vu all over again. The Brewers continue to steal bags left to right and center against the Mets. Their defense is superior from the start to finish. Mets pitching was incompetent, was not able to give the Mets beyond even 4.1 innings. And Jose Quintana today, in which Quintana was the Mets' best starter between himself, Luis Severino, and Sean Manaea. So that in itself is a major problem as we look over their past 3 starts. Collectively, as a whole, those 3 starters and their most pivotal starts of the year, all of which gave the Mets 0 length, nothing whatsoever. So in tonight's show, we're not only going to highlight everything that went terribly wrong for the Mets in this latest matchup, but why exactly everything is now pointing towards us having our last post-game show Monday in that doubleheader against the Atlanta Braves. There is nothing to warrant. There's nothing to suggest that I should have instilled confidence. They need to go out there and prove it, and they did everything to a T yet again for a second consecutive night on how to do every single thing wrong. I greatly appreciate all my live members and all my donators. Thank you guys so much. I will be getting your donations. I'm actually screenshotting them right now, so that way I can circle back and address as many of them as I possibly can. I'm going to get to pretty much every single one of them as long as there aren't any issues. To all my live members, as I usually call you guys out as we first come in, Brian, oh my goodness gracious, keep playing the Hurricane and the Braves, my friend. Season isn't done yet. I will say this, if there's something that Braves fans have a tendency to do, they like to talk a little too soon. So that is all I'll leave you with. Let's get to the end of the regular season. Should the Mets falter that doubleheader, should they not make playoffs, then by all means, talk your shit, do your thing. It's another year in Mets land where we sadly have the end result exactly as you expected heading into things. Should you have had optimism with the Mets trying to crack postseason play, but had pessimism knowing how the season tends to end? JV, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that as well. We need acceptance, Wardy. You're cracking me up. I appreciate that. And I'm going to answer all your donations here in just a second, everybody. But I want to know, what is the feeler in the room right now? To everyone watching live on a replay, I want to see your initial live reactions. I want to know, how pissed off are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your frustration level right now? Because as I evaluate this Mets team and as they come out tonight just mustering a whopping 2 hits against the Milwaukee Brewers, all I can say is that this is such deja vu from the start of the season. This is a team that has no life whatsoever. And what was their big problem? What has carried the Mets so much in the second half has been consistency from their starting pitching. Their offense has been Jekyll and Hyde plenty, that we all know very well. And now as we fast forward all these months later, as the Mets have had the best rotation, best bullpen collectively in baseball throughout the entire month of August or so, heading into September, now the Mets are not getting length from their starters. They're not getting offense from their hitting. Wow, color me shocked. It's almost like the Mets have completely set themselves up for failure right now, or in absolutely no position to have us fans have instilled confidence. And then to add insult to injury, yeah, the Atlanta Braves didn't just win in a walk-off fashion tonight, thanks to everyone's favorite former Mets and nobody, and Travis d'Arnaud with a walk-off bomb. Braves officially have one more win on the Mets right now, so that's something to bear in mind. line. The Arizona Diamondbacks game is still up for grabs, so we'll see what happens there. But what we saw in the Royals there and also the Padres playing lesser lineups, knowing that they've clinched postseason play, the Milwaukee Brewers said, we're not going to do that, and why should Milwaukee? And that's why I told every single one of you guys heading into this series that the Brewers were never going to play down to the Mets, because what can the Brewers do? What is exactly what they're doing right here, right now, is the following. By Milwaukee having all their stars in for the most part and playing their best baseball against this Mets team, this sets them up brilliantly for postseason play. Should the Mets need to grind out that doubleheader on Monday, which is looking increasingly likely at this rate, is there a route where the Mets can still avoid the doubleheader on Monday? Yes. Is it likely at all? No. The odds are completely against them now because they did themselves no favors over the past 24 to 48 hours. But as we evaluate Milwaukee, they very well could play one of the Braves or the Mets in wildcard contention beginning this Tuesday. So if you're Milwaukee, if you're Pat Murphy, you have the proper mindset and you say, let's make sure we have the best guys out there. Let's win this series, so that way, if we are going to tax the bullpen of the Mets, they're going to have a greater problem for their doubleheader. And either way, whoever comes out victorious, whoever ultimately cracks postseason play in those wildcard spots, Milwaukee will likely have an upper hand, not only on potentially facing the Mets again, if the Mets somehow, some way now crack in and have to face Milwaukee for one, but two, knowing that they had these respected teams get beat up the way that they did, grinding it out in an off day where everyone else was resting before postseason play, the Mets are very well going to have to play for their playoff lives. Thank you all so much, everyone, chiming in live on a replay as we break down the latest deflating loss in Mets land by a final score 6-0. No, this is not going to be a hot-headed Wardy rant that you got yesterday. I know a lot of you guys come here to see me scream my head off for basically an hour on end, but not only for trying to prioritize my health tonight, but also just trying to prioritize the reality that is this Mets team did not show up, so why should I go out of my way to show up? I feel like I've shown more emotion, more passion, and more interest in this club than the players themselves, and obviously I know that is not true. They're putting as much effort in every single day. But what are the Mets doing exactly that we have seen countless times in history? And this is where you hate when you say history repeats itself, but it absolutely does here. It is the same nonsense over and over and over again. When the pressure's on, when the lights are on, the Mets are nowhere to be found. This is a continuation of not only 2022, this is a continuation of not only what we have seen in years prior before the Cohen era, the Wilponsian regime. This is just a continuation of what it means to be a Mets fan, where they build you up for an expectation. There were a lot of great things that have happened throughout the course of this 162, which I greatly appreciate. And we're all going to appreciate that. But knowing that this season now looks headlined by OMG and Grimace as your big takeaways shows you how much of a failure the Mets continue to be this one. There are a lot of great takeaways. Do not get me wrong. I think we could look back and say that, yes, everything is going pretty much what we thought would be going with the Mets, if not better, especially for a Mets team that since really over the past 100 games now have the best record in Major League Baseball. Since the end of May, they have been absolutely cruising, but now they're absolutely faltering. They're falling off the ship. The thing is starting to fill up. It's breaking, and it's going to absolutely sink just like the Titanic. And that sinking ship right now is this Mets team that are in now dire need of not only help potentially from the San Diego Padres, and as we currently stand, and as we double check the status of that Padres game right now, it is still 0-0 in the bottom of the 7th. Arizona has one hit, but the Padres don't have a respectable lineup there like they have in previous days to the same degree, so who the hell knows what's going to happen there. I'm going to go with the thought process of the D-backs end up winning that ball game, and the Mets really have a big problem because all the guys that you needed to lose ended up winning tonight. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Padres win, maybe in a walk-off fashion, whatever, but still, the fact that we now need to rely on these guys to lose ball games just for your chance to crack postseason play is disgusting. And my biggest takeaway, my biggest concern here is just how much the Mets have continued to show exactly why there were fans that were pessimistic from the start. There were fans that were pessimistic even when things were riding high because they firmly believed that we were going to see a crash and burn the way that we're seeing right now. It's not just Pete Alonso not showing up, which is a surprise to absolutely nobody, almost like he's a guy that is far from a guaranteed return this offseason, not because of him necessarily wanting to come back or not, but more so because the Mets are going to be stubborn in their willingness to suspend, because what are we seeing right now from Pete Alonso that David Stern should be saying, yeah, let's go out of our way to sign signed this guy to a long-term deal, $200+ million. Missed me with that bullshit. And now as I evaluate this Mets team, I'm trying not to look into the offseason because the season is not over. It is not done. And I have been preaching all year long to each and every one of you guys, especially you schmucks out there that wrote off the season going all the way back there in March and April when the Mets were 11 games below 500. I told you all it's a marathon, not a sprint. The problem is, folks, the marathon is coming to an end. We ran that shit all summer long, months on end. We were running, hustling, things were riding high, things were going well. Now we are crashing and burning, and right before we get to the finish line, you just tripped up. Oh, you ran out of water. Oh, you got no one to help you carry you down to the finish line, and you're dragging your feet, you twisted your ankle, now you freaking stepped in a pothole. You're simply not there. You're dragging, you're clawing, you're teething away just for the reality to be that this Mets team, unless they prove us otherwise tomorrow, heading into then Monday, a vital doubleheader, this Mets team that showed so much amazing life, so much personality, and so many amazing things in general this season are flushing down the toilet in the most Metsian way possible. That is not only disgusting, it is disheartening as a continuation of the exact problems that we have had that have really not only been instilled in Mets fans, but have built the character among Mets fans that we have seen over the years. David Pearson is officially the starter for the Mets there tomorrow in their series finale and potentially a do-or-die game against the Milwaukee Brewers, which obviously I hope and pray that Pearson balls out tomorrow. I expected this rotation configuration to be the case. My only hiccup was I thought Pearson would start today, Quintana tomorrow, Sevy, and then Tyler McGill as your doubleheader 1 and 2. That's going to be the case now. For the Mets, they're going to have to face Chris Sale and Schwallenbach now in their doubleheader. And why is that a problem? It's Chris Sale who's going to win the Cy Young Award this year, more than likely, and Schwallenbach, in which he has pitched against the Mets this season at least 14 innings of 1 earned run baseball totaling 15 strikeouts. Please enlighten me as to why I should feel confident, let alone excited, about what the next 24 to 48 hours have in store for our New York Metropolitans. Please enlighten me, everybody. Pat, where is the watch party Monday? We'll see about Monday. Truthfully, I think it's going to go in hand with how tomorrow goes. If things are really bananas heading into Monday, we might F around and do a big watch party and then do post-game coverage. Maybe we'll do a watch party for game 1 and then we'll do post-game coverage there after games 1 and 2. I kind of like that idea personally, so we'll see what happens then, everybody. But look, I'm not going to go on this complete spiel and completely deep dive to a T on this ball game. The Mets had 2 hits, so let's just get into the key takeaways here on where they faltered most and where we had our greatest frustration level. Because now the Mets on this road trip are, if I'm not mistaken, at least 0-15 with runners in scoring position, if not 0-16. Let's not forget the Mets' one and only run that we saw against the Atlanta Braves, where they lost 5-1 a couple days ago over this past week, was Mark Vientos ripping an absolute ding-dong. If it wasn't for that, nothing else to show for it, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure Marky V was the lone offensive, upside there in that ball game because he cares, right? As I've been joking and saying lately. But now as we fast forward over those past couple days, after that game 1, it's like, okay, then we get into yesterday's matchup. The Mets don't hit a lick. Again, they lose 8-4 as their final, but the offense was few and far in between. It was Jekyll and Hyde. They had opportunities they couldn't pounce. We entered this matchup here against, again, a plethora of pitchers that you're going to see. A total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pitchers thrown by the Brewers. The Mets had to throw 5 in this one because Jose Quintana sadly cannot give them length. But what I saw here was a Mets team that simply did not have an answer from the start, and a Brewers team that has absolutely dominated the Mets. For context, folks, the Brewers have already stolen 15 bags against the Mets this season. In case you're wondering, that's on like 30 or so. Like this is insane. This stat in general is stupid. So let me relay each and every one of you. This was earlier in the ballgame, this was 15 minutes in the ballgame. So I'm pretty sure the Brewers now have 16, if not 17 stolen bags against the Mets this season. That's against the Mets this season. That's just one singular team that has absolutely worked them time and time and time again. And instead of having a proper remedy, as we heard post-game from Carlos Mendoza and the Mets saying, you know what, we understand that, yes, having Luis Trens back there with Alvarez back healthy. Alvi pinch hit later in the game. Nothing transpired from it that we know, and they stayed in the game. Trens, who's known for throwing out guys beautifully at second base, wasn't even able to do that competently at all today. Luis Angel Acuna did not look as sharpest there at shortstop, bouncing back, coming back after being on the bench for the past couple days for the Mets with Lindor at the shortstop position. Lindor in the DH position in this one as well. Didn't look overly comfortable. Just his entire Mets lineup, top to bottom, did not look comfortable at all. And if it isn't for Jose Iglesias, Mr. OMG himself, being the lone man to sign that minor league contract entering the season and then being our MVP candidate, not named Francisco Lindor, there was nothing, and I truly mean nothing, to show for it on the offensive end. So guys and gals, before we kind of deep dive a little bit more on this, let me make sure that I do not miss anything. Thank you guys so much for the donations. I greatly appreciate that. I promise I'm going to answer every single donation thrown our way, just not doing it yet because I got a lot to say, and I know that we only have so much shelf life, so much time that we have here for 800 plus concurrent live viewers. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight as the Mets sadly falter by a final score of 6-0 in this one, everybody. But I have one key question for each and every one of you. It's as simple as this. Before we deep dive kind of the big takeaways in this matchup, and then we talk about how the Mets can go about trying to right the ship on not only still trying to crack postseason play, their ability to still potentially avoid the doubleheader Monday. Yes, that is still possible. Is it likely? Hell no. Not a chance it's likely at all, but it's still possible. We'll expand on that here in a second. But my question that I have for everyone watching live on a replay is as follows, so let's not buckle up and answer right away. Are the Mets going to make playoffs? It's as simple as that. Give me a yes or no answer. Spam in the live chat for my replay viewers. Spam it down below. I greatly appreciate that. Let's go Padres, and we have a pulse. Padres apparently got the lead, I'd assume, if that's what you guys are saying. Do I want Pete back next year? I want Pete back at the right price, which means I probably don't want Alonso back because he's going to want to overpay from the schmuck that is Boris, and I have no interest in giving Pete Alonso the money that he's likely going to be seeking this offseason. Nothing personal against Pete, but Pete has shown what he will be at his best and at his worst right now in Queens. And in a year where on paper he had the deepest lineup he's ever had since becoming a New York Metropolitan back in 2019, he did absolutely nothing with it in a high pressure cooker year when you denied your contract extension last year at the trade deadline from Billy upward of over $170 million. It's coming back to snap and bite you right in the face, just like to a degree Michael Conforto when he denied a long-term extension with the Mets a couple years ago, bet on himself, ended up having a season-ending injury to have him out for an entire offseason. That's why he had to sign that 2 or 3 year deal with the San Francisco Giants just to kind of stay afloat. But let's see, we got a lot of yeses, we got some nos. Also really curious where you guys stand on the Pete Alonso topic as well. It's a polarizing one. I understand that. It's one that we're constantly talking about if we're in favor or we're against here. But you know what I'm in favor of greatly? The Mets playing competent baseball. The problem, the Mets are deciding not to do that at all over the past how many games now? And normally wouldn't bother me as much, but knowing that this may very well be our third to last our third to last post-game coverage of the year really heartbreaks me. Knowing how far the Mets have gone to fall short the way that they have, they need to prove it wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say the Mets season is over because it's not, but the writing's on the wall right now and their backs are all the way up against it. How are they going to reply to this? How are they going to bounce back, if at all? There's a great reality where the Mets don't show up again there in a Sunday day game, which has been their demise all year long, which would be far from shocking, especially with David Pearson on the bump. The Mets have a tendency to not give David Pearson runs on Sunday day games, so that's already another factor going against them. But let's say the Mets do win tomorrow. They do F around. Then you're going to have a high-pressure cooker situation where you're likely going to need one, if not both, games in that doubleheader against the Atlanta Braves, where they're pitching their two best starters imaginable for the Mets to face. Exclude Max Fried because Schwellenbach has been such a pain in the ass for the Mets all year long. The two starts they faced him, they simply have no recipe at all. Chris Sale, the Mets did score a couple runs on last time they faced, so that was somewhat encouraging, but it wasn't enough when you look at the grander scheme of things. And I know you're probably saying, Wardy, the Mets are absolutely rolling over and dying now. It doesn't matter if they make playoffs. They're going to do nothing come postseason play. You may very well be right, but the reason why I'm not going to sit here and fully commit to that just yet is only because of what we saw with the Arizona Diamondbacks last year, what we saw with the Philadelphia Phillies 2 years ago. Teams that crack in this wild card spot, especially in that third spot, have had a tendency, if history does repeat itself in that sense, of not cracking postseason play, playing your best baseball in your final month of the year, but making a difference, turning things on when you need to once you finally cracked postseason play. We have no clue what's going to happen from now up until Monday night's conclusion, but what I can tell you right now, folks, is mentally prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and hopefully we find ourselves on the ladder and not the beginning. I want Wardy to scream and yell. Martin, I know you do, but here's the thing. We all get tired of that at some point. I'm exhausted. I got literally no sleep last night. It wasn't just because of the kiddo. It was also because truly how disheartened I was with the Mets and that game yesterday. I did not have it in instilled confidence heading into today's game, sadly, and that is exactly what we're seeing right before our very eyes. The continuation of the exact problems the Mets have had for a vast majority of the season when things have not went right, when they haven't been able to step up in these high-pressure situations. But speaking of the Devils, speaking of the Mets, we're in 20 minutes in the show, so I think it goes without saying it's time for me to break down a little bit of the ball game, right? So let's do exactly that. After that, I will get into some donations, and then from there, we will talk a bit more on how the Mets should go about tomorrow and ultimately the rest of the regular season, regardless on if it ends this Monday or not. But As we saw there, everybody, in the first, Jose Iglesias is the Mets' first runner of the day. So 1 out and a runner's on there after Francisco Lindor, who began today's game in the DH position, struck out there to begin the ball game. Just for context, Lindor was batting leadoff today in the DH position. Iglesias second at the second base position. Vientos third at the hot quarter. Nemo fourth in left field. Alonso fifth at batting on first base. Marte with a double that we saw today. The lone Mets hitter to record an extra base hit for context too there. 1 for 3 day for him in right field. Terrens there at the backstop. Bader at center field, who was horrendous. Tyrone Taylor should have started this game. Bader's at bats didn't look good from the beginning. He should have been pulled after his second at bat. But you know what, Mendy, it's okay. Let's wait until after we're already down 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 runs, and then let's make that exact change, because that makes sense. Then we're gonna have Acuna there batting ninth in the layoff position back at shortstop. Was happy to see Acuna here. However, Acuna's lack of experience really showed in this one, and not only the lack of experience with Acuna in this matchup on the defensive end, but also the Mets entirely when I look at the Mets right now, and when I look at how they went about this game, how they went about this series, they have completely rolled over. And it really pisses me off, because that's something that we've been trying to avoid big time with all the peaks and valleys the Mets have had this season. They literally still have had the best record in Major League Baseball since May 30th. And all that's going to go down the drain and mean nothing very soon if they don't get their head straight out of their ass. And after Iglesias ripped that single the first, the Mets have nothing to show for it. As we advance to the bottom of the first, we see Jose Quintana give up a leadoff single to the electrifying rookie Jackson Chourio. Then we see there a strikeout on Garrett Mitchell, but Chourio, of course, steals his 26th bag of the year. Brewers won't score, but already with the first base runner to get on base to lead off, they are showcasing exactly what the biggest Mets problem will continue to be, and those holes that we saw back in March are going to come back to continue bite the Mets ass here deep in late season play. Should they crack postseason play, I assure you teams are going to have the exact same recipe. They're going to run on the Mets every single effing inning, and they're going to make sure that the Mets need to prove their ability to get these runners out, because what are the Mets doing? Showcasing exactly why they can do anything but that, sadly. As we then get to the second inning, we would see the Mets get Pete Alonso starting the inning at second base because of a terrible error by Willie Adames. The Mets were quite literally gifted a runner with scoring a runner in scoring position to kick off this ball game, and they did nothing with it. Nothing, nada at all. So that was already a very disheartening moment, because the Mets could have taken an early lead against a Brewers team that you know is going to step up. You know the bats are going to show up. You know Jose Quintana, even at his best, is only going to take you so far in a start like this. And Quintana, who did look sharp early, had everything crashing down on him in his final inning or so. But before we got there, we got in the bottom of the second with 2 outs. Isaac Collins gets on with a single, and that's all she wrote. Solid inning for Jose Quintana. Then we advance to the third. The Mets do nothing. It's a 1-2-3. And in the third inning, the Mets had nothing to show for it at all. And in the bottom of the third, neither did the Brewers. They go down in order there with a pair of strikeouts. Jose Quintana with a gorgeous inning, if only that would stay the same thing. As we advance to the fourth inning, the Mets on the offensive end step right up. Marky V, Brandon Nemo, Pete Alonso, and give us a steaming pile of dog shit that you call an at-bat. They all strike out. This side is struck out there by the Brewers after they utilized just 1 inning of Koenig there to begin the ball game. Then they went to Myers, who went 4 shutty, 5 strikeouts, 1 hit, 0 earned runs, 0 walks. 3-year rate for a guy that was an afterthought for the Brewers initially heading into the season, similar to how Jose Iglesias was for the Mets, funny enough, both guys impacting the teams greatly. Then we see with 1 out, Willie Adames gets on base here in the bottom of the fourth with a single. Reese Hoskins then gets on with a walk. So already a jam here for Jose Quintana in this matchup. 2 on, less than 2 out. Gary Sanchez will then be called out on strikes. Brilliant at bat there for Jose Quintana to attack Gary the way that he did, especially that outside quarter on his breaking pitches. Gary simply didn't have a recipe for. That was awesome. But then you walk Isaac Collins there. Mind you, you're walking the bottom of the order here, and that's a big problem when we're looking at this team. I shouldn't say bottom of the order, because Collins today was batting, well, I mean, he was batting 7th, I believe, so still the lower half of the order, right? So, yeah, bases loaded here, less than 2, or with 2 out, rather, and Joey Ortiz, in an at-bat that was looking good early for Jose Quintana, gets worked to a full count, and then Joey bloops one for a 2-run single. That drives in the first 2 runs of the ball game. That would ultimately win the ball game right there for Milwaukee, and Milwaukee would not only never look back, but the Mets, as much as they would try to claw, their attempts at clawing is the equivalent of a fucking kitten going out there and giving you a little scratch. Not like a lion or anything, really clawing away, really trying to dig deep and get what they want, whether that's their prey or whatever that is. No, we have these little kitten claws, if you will, these little mittens that we call the Mets trying to claw away, trying to teeth away, literally like a baby because this Mets team had nothing to show for it on the offensive end. They were absolutely cooked from the start of this ball game and would only get worse from there because we would see the Mets get a ground rule double from Starling Marte to begin the 5th inning. We're only down a pair of runs. Just like this, the Mets, if they get themselves a single, it's a one-run ball game. And another inning for the Mets, for the second time in the past 3 innings, they allowed the leadoff hitter to get to second base and score nothing. That is inexcusable, and that right there are exactly why, examples of exactly why, rather, this Mets team may very well not crack postseason play. It's because of this kind of shit and crunch time in the most important time of the year. Seriously, can we just take a moment to sit back just for a second? Just for a second. The Mets got 2 hit on one of their final games of the regular season when they're pushing for playoffs. 2 fucking hit. Like, that's just inexcusable. And I know you're saying, well, when we look at the Diamondbacks game, they haven't hit all that much right now. Yeah, but here's the thing. All they need is a run, and they might win that ball game, right? So it doesn't matter all that much. It just matters in the context of these specific games. And the context of these specific games right now is that the Mets don't have the clutch factor. They cannot handle the high pressure. And while, yes, they have definitely righted wrongs from earlier in the season, the Mets have built an expectation. They have built a level of, okay, we expect them to win here and there. We expect them to go out and win most series. They have built this expectation after a tremendous summer run, and now they're kicking us all in the teeth and the balls and saying, sorry, we're going to fall short just in our typical Mets way. Again, I do not hope this happens. I'm just relaying the nonsense and the bullshit that we witnessed over the past 48 to 72 hours, which is this godforsaken team right now. Now, again, I love them to death, but because I love them to death is the same reason why I hate them to death. It's because of stuff like this. Again, it's the same cycle over and over again, and I hate to repeat myself the same way that you guys hate to repeat yourself, and you hate to say, oh, I'm right again. But right now, there's nothing inclined to believe that things will not be different until proven otherwise. Trio with his 29th double of the year there that we saw in the bottom of the 5th, that would ultimately lead to nothing, thankfully, but still, Phil Maton would come in the ball game for Jose Quintana after just recording 1 out. Jose Quintana's final line, everybody, it was not a good one. 4.1 innings, and that was about it from Jose, right? 4.1, 5 hits, 2 earned run, 2 walk, 9 strikeouts, a 3.75 ERA there for Jose Quintana on the year, and he was far from the big problem for the Mets in this matchup, I will agree there, but he also didn't do the Mets favors because we didn't get length. That was terrible. Huge play by Manny. Okay, so the Padres just probably had a huge play by Manny in the hot corner to hopefully either end the inning there against the Diamondbacks or, to have things advance to the next half inning or so. So good. Happy to hear that. Not complaining there. Appreciate you, my man. Ballcap, amazing member, great friend of mine. Guys, please make sure to follow and subscribe to Ballcap Sports, one of the best baseball channels out there in the YouTube game today. Tremendous friend of mine, and he is a Blue Jays fan, so he's got nothing to root for right now outside of potentially the Mets trying to crack postseason play. We appreciate you, buddy. Zach with the $2 holla. Thank you so much, my man. I'm going to answer that after I get to all the other comments because I know that we have a bunch of donations earlier in the show that I have to get to in a second, everybody. But as we continue to break down this really unfortunate ball game for us Mets fans, not unfortunate for the Mets because they made their bed here. They're going to have to deal with the consequence. Unfortunate for us fans who have lived and died with this team throughout the course of a 162 that are now facing the great reality that our season may very well be coming to a close by Monday's end. Maybe even before. But again, hopefully that isn't the case, right? I don't believe it would be, but God willing, that isn't the case by any stretch of the imagination. Then we see in the 6th inning, after, Phil Maton got the job done in the 5th, we see in the 6th on the pitching end, nothing else transpires because Maton works a gorgeous inning of work there as well. Phil Maton gave the Mets 1.2 shutty today, 4 strikeouts on 14 pitches, and now we're not going to have Phil Maton tomorrow in a game where we may very well need him most. The Mets wasted Maton, they wasted Stanek. Reed Garrett stepped right up and gave you batting practice that we saw there in the 8th inning. Not that it mattered at that point because the Mets weren't going to hit a lick to save their life to begin with, but seriously, you're using some of your higher leverage arms now in this situation, just like how you had to utilize Budo yesterday for over an inning, and nothing to show for it again. Everything, truly everything is collapsing on itself in the worst way possible. Ralph, thank you so much for the $5 holla. I greatly appreciate that. The Great Reality by Martin Scorsese coming soon. Fun fact about Martin Scorsese, I'm not blood related to Martin Scorsese. However, I do have family ties to him. My cousin's cousin is cousins with Martin Scorsese. So there's that. But it's not blood-related cousin. It's just family within my cousins from their mom's side, and I'm not blood related to their mom's side from there. And another little tangent as well, the actor who played the young Henry Hill that you guys saw in Goodfellas, for all my Goodfellas OGs out there, that is one of my cousins, and that is blood related as well. So just some fun facts out there, because I'm a huge movie buff. I love my Italian mafia, everything regarding whether it's Godfather, whether it's Goodfellas, whether it's Mean Streets. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's so many classics. I just want to throw out there because at least that's a positive that I can say, while everything else is a shit show in this conversation night, okay? But now let's get back into this and let's talk about what's relevant here, which is not everything I just said, so my apologies. We see in the bottom of the 7th, the Mets get a 1-2-3. They strike out the side there. Ryan Stanek does a fantastic job. My apologies, actually. He strikes out 2. He gets a key fly out on Trio there. I think fairly deep to right there to Marte to end the inning unscathed. Then we see the Mets trying to do more, nothing to show for. Tyrone Taylor comes in as pinch hitter, nothing there whatsoever. Then we see the Brewers trying to tack on more, and they would do exactly that. Reed Garrett comes in the 8th inning, and then we see from there Garrett Mitchell would then steal his 11th bag of the year after getting on with a single. Then Adames rips a single just like that and makes it 3-0, and already there's 2 on, less than 2 out here. It's 3-0 Brewers. We see Hoskins strikes out. Jake Bowers gets on with a single, and then we see Isaac Collins strike out. Then with 2 outs, here comes more runs, because of course they do. Reed Garrett with another no-show outing here. Joe Ortiz with a walk drives in his 3rd run of the day to make it 4-0 Milwaukee, and that's 6-0 Milwaukee after Andrew Monasterio rips a single to drive in a pair after Danny Young comes into the ball game, because of course that happens. The Mets go on to lose this one by a final score of 6-0 after Jose Iglesias and his OMG heroics gets on with a walk. Nothing else to show for it in the 9th. The Mets go down from there, and they are currently not in a good position whatsoever. Henry, you look like a gangster. Love that, D. If you know, you know. All right, guys. I hate talking about the Mets when they're like this. I hate it. I hate it because you know it's bad when I'm not even screaming and ranting. You know what I mean? We've let that out a lot this year. Yesterday was a great example of exactly that. But the fact that I'm not going out of my way to act in that manner or in that fashion right now tells you all you need to know at the moment. But let me get to your comments now, because there are a bunch of comments I want to answer from you guys. Then from there, we're going to talk about playoff configuration. What do the Mets need to do in order to find themselves getting in? That is a big question. Harrison Bader unsubscribed. It's okay. I don't think Bader was a subscriber to begin with. So shout out Harrison, though. He's a good guy, but, you know, he absolutely has been shit the past month. JD Martinez too, just not existent on the offensive end. Zach with the donation earlier, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We did get a donation from Greg earlier before the show even began, and Greg had to say the following with his $5 donation. Mets team offensive stats misleading, large standard deviation, either world beaters or asleep. Too bad they chose the latter to end the season. Yes, too bad indeed. Greg, thank you for the donation. That is a sad reality, but that's one we're currently living in, because the Mets have been very, very, very Jekyll and Hyde with their offense for a good stretch now. Let's see. Nemo said he's okay with it in his SNY interview. Okay with what exactly? Frank Sessa, thank you for the donation too. Wrong time for the bats to fall asleep. I think that's an understatement, yes, considering the Mets literally on the brink of playoff elimination before even cracking playoffs. You know, basically, they're on the brink of not making playoffs right now with the way that they're routing, which is a terrible thing for this Mets team right now. Zach Flakerton with a $2 donation earlier says, not watching these last 3, I'm not strong enough. Zach is leaving up to the baseball gods, which is the worst mistake that he could ever make, but I commend him, because you know what? These games are hard, you know, and sometimes you really can't handle it, and sometimes, you know, you can only watch so much baseball and be disheartened and then want to see the final nail in the coffin should the Mets falter this weekend. I would implore each and every one of you fans to step up and to support your team no matter what, but I'm not going to tell you guys how to fan. You guys can do whatever you want, act however you want, say whatever you want to say. When the team doesn't show up for you the way that they need to in a time like this, naturally there's pessimism, naturally there's concern, and naturally there's frustration, all of which are not only warranted, but are expected. And this is one final thing that I have to say, folks, before I get to some donations here. I was holding back. I'm not helping. You're so negative, typically negative Mets fan. Don, with all due respect, you're so out of the realm of reality, because if you were a genuine follower here on the channel every single day, you would know damn well that we are as optimistic as one can be, and we are pessimistic when it's warranted to be pessimistic. But to come out here and be as ill-minded as you are, clearly one who's not a loyal follower here on the channel, is disheartening to go out of your way to make comments that simply aren't true. So you're entitled to your opinion. That's fine. You're wrong. That's okay. And now we're going to continue on by breaking this down. And what I want to break down with each and every one of you here, and this is something that I personally have a gripe with, is for the talking heads, not only in the Mets space, but just in the sporting space in general. There are so many out there that go out of their way to talk down on fans when they are pessimistic, when they are kind of being overly pessimistic, and I am among those talking heads when it happens, especially even with the Mets 11 games below 500. I know it was doom and gloom, but for anyone that was writing off the Mets at that time, I was not one of those people whatsoever that was suggesting, saying, okay, yes, this is a Mets team that's going to roll over and die the rest of the season. No, I was always giving them the benefit of the doubt. I would just want to see them go out and prove it. They have done that. Now, my gripe personally that I have, and this is just a me problem, no one else, but there are specific talking heads out there in the Mets space and just the baseball space as a whole that never have anything to say. They never have anything to tweet when things go wrong and when every fan has every reason to be pissed off, justifiably so. But as soon as things start to go right, they jump on the tails as if they've been here the entire time, and then talk down the fans who have been here through thick and thin, who are just understanding the greater reality of a 162. To those talking heads, they can go fuck themselves, because I can't stand them. They are the biggest hypocrites that we have currently in the community. San Diego's up 2-0. That is amazing. We will greatly take that. Shout out to the Padres. Slam Diego, baby. Hopefully that stays. Should the Padres win and should the D-backs lose, in that hypothetical, the Mets will thankfully still be staying afloat. And now I do want to really talk about, actually, it's 3-0 after another homer. There you go. Padres said, you know what, Mets, we want to help you out. We don't want the Snakes to make playoffs at all. AJ Puk reeks. Here's the thing. AJ Puk was absolutely lights out post-trade deadline from Miami to the Arizona Diamondbacks for a month and a half or so. I don't know what the hell's happened to him lately, but clearly things aren't the same. He's getting rocked in this one. Padres are pouncing. Slam Diego's looking for a victory, and the Mets are looking to stay afloat here in the wild card race. Do I want to rely on these things? No, of course I don't. But it is sadly one of those things that we have to deal with at the moment, given the current status of the club. Now, thank you so much for the donation, Zach, earlier. I appreciate that. John McDonald with the $5 holla. Thank you so much. He says they don't want it, playing like they already got their stuff packed. You're not wrong, John. They literally, what we've seen over the past 24 hours is a Mets team that's completely rolled over. They need to change it, and they need to do it fast, because there isn't any more time left this season. Like, I don't know if the boys realize this or not, but yeah, your season's over after Monday, buddy. How about you get your head out of your ass a little bit and give us what we need right now, which is competent baseball. Just competent baseball. Keep yourself in the ball game. The boys aren't even doing that. JV with a 250, thank you so much. He says, we need acceptance, Wardy. Like in any death, we need closure. Farewell, Pete. I'm not sitting here and saying farewell to Pete. For all my pessimistic fans out there when it comes to the topic of Pete Alonso that are not in favor of him returning, by all means, talk your talk however you want to go about it. That's fine by me. I want Pete Alonso to return. I would like Pete Alonso to be a Met for the remainder of his career. I know that Pete Alonso will have a bounce-back season next year with the pressure off his shoulders, now on a likely longer-term contract with the Mets or another organization. I firmly expect that, and I believe that because that goes directly in hand with what the trend of Pete Alonso has been. Without the pressure of the contract situation, Pete Alonso, for the most part, has been a very sharp hitter for the Mets, has been vital to their success over the past number of years. Pete Alonso, with pressure and a walk here for the first time in his career, has no clue how to handle it. It's as simple as that. You don't need to overthink it. He just can't handle the current pressure with what he currently is dealing with that he hasn't dealt with otherwise in his career in the past, especially at the pro level like this. So Alonso, I want back, but by all means, if he walks because the Mets don't want to give him a huge bag, okay. Like, I get it. I'm not opposed to that either. I want what is ever best for this Mets team for their continued success, and I'm firmly believing that David Stearns is going to lead the way in that regard. So, look, this was a so-called punt year for many Mets fans. That was what they deemed to believe, and the Mets are still on pace to have right around close to a 91 season. Maybe they're not going to get 190 now at this rate, right? Because they only have a couple games left that we know, and they got to control their destiny. But a lot of things I think we could look back and say, especially after May, that you'd be happy with the end of the season's outcome for the Mets. But knowing, just like 2022, and the fashion and the way that they are now faltering to end the season, that is what makes it sting so much more, and that is what continues this continued thought process that the Mets simply cannot clutch up. They cannot handle these pressure situations when they need to most. Or he kicks the Braves fans. I can't kick the Braves fans, and because there's plenty of them in here. They're eating this up for breakfast right now. Anything that is going wrong in Mets land while the Braves are actively doing well, they're going to be in here, and that's fine. Braves fans can talk their shit. They have the season series on the Mets right now. That doubleheader is a bigger problem for the Mets than it is the Braves at the moment. We're well aware of that. Should the doubleheader happen, they have all the right in the world to talk their shit. We have to deal with it. The same way that when the Mets and us fans have the right to talk our shit, we're going to dish it, and if Braves fans don't want to take it and deal with it, that's fine, but it's still going to happen, rightfully so. I dish it, I can take it. The same thing has to be happening here in the chat. So no, I'm not going to go out my way to ban all these Braves fans or whatever, because at the end of the day, they're also still a view, and we appreciate the viewership. We're never going to complain there. If there's one thing that I'll never complain about, it's Braves fans actively giving me money while they're going out of their way to talk shit. So if you're going to talk shit, at least give me a couple dollars while you're at it, and they tend to do that with their ad revenue. So I'm not complaining there whatsoever. Control their destiny? Yes, I know. I'm well aware that they are not controlling their destiny well. That goes without saying. It's almost like that we have been rattling this off for the past how much times now? Let's see. Warrior loves them here because they boo. Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. Not going to complain about that at all. I would understand things more if, say, I was talking all this shit on the Braves all year long, and I'm like being a sore loser and I can't handle. No, not at all. Not at all. I know what the Braves are. I know what their ups and downs have been this year. I know when healthy, they're such a better team, it's not even funny. And I also know that the Braves right now are a very vulnerable team, that the Mets should be a better team then, that they should be taking advantage of, and they're simply not doing that right now. Will the Mets have an opportunity to do that this Monday? Yes, they will. But will they? That is a great question that we're not going to find out for a couple days still. Yeah, no Mets highlights. You guys love that graphic, don't you? You want to know the funny thing about this graphic? This is a graphic I made back in March. Fitting, considering that this was one of the last times I used this graphic was going back in March when the Mets got cooked by the Brewers. So, again, deja vu, something about always coming full circle in the worst way possible. Braves fan donation. Benjamin, thank you so much for the $10 holla. Congratulations on your victory, as much as it pisses me off to say that. You're a loyal member. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for all you do and being a great supporter here through thick and thin. Now let's get some more donations here, everybody. As we see, the last chicken with a $2 holla says, this is the same team that beat the Phillies? Yeah, believe it or not, this is the same team that won 3 out of 4 against the Phillies. Almost like home field advantage, momentum, those things certainly go in hand. Anthony Viola with a $5 holla says, let's not go 0-5 like we did the first 5 of the season. Please play better, boys. Go Padres, LGM, mad and sad as fuck, shaking my head. You and I both, Anthony. And since that comment, Anthony, the Padres listen. Shout out Born Out Hogwatch. I appreciate them with the 3 runs there to give the Padres a late 3-0 lead over Arizona. $2 donation from Cherno says, can't wait to see Pete in an Angels uniform. Go San Diego. That's a funny comment. Thank you so much for that. Pat White, great member with $2 holla says, where's the watch party Monday? We addressed that earlier in the show. That may happen Monday, so be on the lookout. Michael Saya with the $10 holla. Sadly, Michael has been in this trend where he will continue to donate to me because the Mets are giving him no reason to spend his money towards them. So now we're $40 up on Wardy donations, but we're 0 up on the Mets. Why? Because the Mets aren't playing good baseball whatsoever. I appreciate the donation greatly, Michael. Thank you so much for that. But I apologize that you feel inclined now to donate to me because the Mets are giving you no reason whatsoever to go out of your way to buy playoff tickets. It's almost like the Mets knew exactly what they were doing, knowing the financial gain that they get there, even if they have to induce all those refunds at the end of the day, between fees and other things to a degree, by unlisting Mets playoff tickets, going all the way back to, what was it? Because today's Saturday. Mets released playoff tickets on Wednesday or Thursday, right? Absolutely nuts. 5-0 Padres. There we go. Slammed you. I've always been a big Padres guy, don't you know? Cue the sarcasm. Seriously, we're rooting for the Padres now, but if the Mets make playoffs and match up against the Padres, fuck San Diego, right? But we're not going to say that now. Right now, go Padres, baby. We're rooting for you. We're not complaining there. Not complaining there. Let's see. You owe me for watching the Mets game. I don't know you, Jack. And so what I do appreciate is you chiming in, no less. Ralph, thank you so much for the $5 holla earlier. I appreciate that. Let's see. Zach Flakerton with $2 holla says, decent chance this team doesn't see another win. Sadly, you're not completely wrong there, my friend. And that is all the latest there on the donations. I do believe that I caught up. I'm just double checking to make sure I didn't miss any of you guys. Thank you so much for them. Really does mean the world to me, especially in a deflating loss like this where, I'm just ready to hit the hay and hopefully have the Mets play decent baseball tomorrow where I don't feel inclined to either scream my head off or just come out here depressed and kind of dragging my feet the way that the Mets dragged their asses to the plate today and absolutely got cooked in the 2-hitter pitched by the Milwaukee Brewers in this one. Master Deeble, how are you? Happy to have you in here. Daniel Caps, great member. We got Sean, great member in here. I'm a Padres fan now, says Sean. That's hilarious. Scott, Chalk, Benjamin, going up the list here. Let's get to some other members here that I didn't get a chance to shout out earlier. Anthony, how you doing? Appreciate you plenty there. Daniel, if I didn't mention him, I did though. We got a Braves fan donation earlier. My man Benjamin, thank you again for that. I know my man Dave Kaplitz was here in the show. I don't know if he still is. Dominic, all you guys, great members. Thank you so much for taking the time. Everyone watching live on a replay, thank you all all so much for being in here as we're breaking down the latest in Mets land. Where this makes me very sad because this season won't be remembered for the magical OMG, but the collapse. Yes, and you want to know what's going to happen? The Mets don't make playoffs. That magical OMG and Grimace will be now the continued laughingstock. The same way that Mets fans reference Timmy Trumpet when he came out to perform Narco live at Citi Field in 2022, and then the Mets faltered from thereafter, is the same way that Mets fans are going to use all the things that were exciting and fun and stupid as riding high on these trendy waves throughout the course of 162. They're going to use now against the Mets completely. This Grimace right here, this Grimace, not a single fan is going to give a flying fuck about the Mets don't make playoffs at all. And anyone that does, then I commend you, because I feel like you're in the minority there. Vast majority of Mets fans that I usually interact with are the types that basically they're just in favor of whatever's going right for the team, right? As soon as things are going wrong or they fall short, they don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, for example, when the Mets had a sliver of success in the 2021 season and Donnie Stevenson was a part of things. Does anyone look back on that success in that stretch and say, wow, Donnie Stevenson, that was fun, that was good? No, you say, who the hell was this guy? The Mets literally paid a bodybuilder to come out here and act like a hitting coach, when in reality, he was still probably a better hitting coach than whatever the fuck Eric Chavez is giving you this year. You know, like that sucks. So that's not fun. We look back on, you know, when they ride that little stupid stuffed pony for a little bit. You know, remember when we had those rallies and just the stupid nonsense that we do every single year? Like, again, this is what it's going to come down to. Everything is going to come full circle, and we're going to talk about how this was a year of Grimace. This was a year of an OMG song from a minor league player beginning the season before we would figure out how great he'd ultimately be for the Mets this year. But no one's going to talk about the amazing Mets throughout the course of the 162. No one's going to talk about the Mets having the best record in baseball since the end of May. Everyone's going to talk about how they fell short, how they fell flat on their face, and how they, when it came to pressure and expectations, did exactly what sadly you'd expect to any fan that's been a fan of the Mets beyond just this season. Diamondbacks lost. Awesome. Diamondbacks lost. That is fantastic news. I don't believe it is officially updated yet, but as we transition into the wildcard standings, everybody, right now the Arizona Diamondbacks still thankfully have the same losses as the Mets, and the Mets are, they're currently saying they're half game out, but with the Diamondbacks loss, we're still in that tie there, and that's huge. And the good news with the Diamondbacks losing today, that's really what the Mets need to happen most. Like, yes, we would love the Atlanta Braves to lose. No one's complaining there. But realistically, the Mets really don't need to root against the Braves technically this weekend in order for things to go right. Now with the Arizona Diamondbacks losing, and they have already lost their series here to the San Diego Padres when Slam Diego didn't even have that great of a lineup out there today after clinching playoffs. Now let's get into the playoff scenarios that the Mets could find themselves in, because there are a couple. Not a lot. Oh, you guys are saying the Diamondbacks lost? All right, the game didn't happen yet. Let's see. I don't agree with that, Wardy. All things Mets talk, enlighten me on what you don't agree with. That's okay. I know you guys don't agree with me on everything. That's fine. I don't expect you to. That's the whole point of having discourse here in the chat, though, going back and forth. And if we're going to be bygones, by all means, go ahead. And if we do find ourselves in common ground, awesome. I feel like I've done at least a decent job over the years on trying to help, you know, be a good representation of what is the average fan to a lot of Mets fans, being overly emotional at times, being irrational, but being very optimistic and excited about their team as long as they're playing the baseball that they should find themselves, that they should be playing. I'm always going to tell it how it is. I know that there are times where maybe I come off a little bit overly optimistic to you. Mainly that's because, one, I'm very excited in the moment about those things happening. I see the upside over the downside. Then I can be at times overly pessimistic, especially when you have a month of May in which the way the Mets did, it can make every fan go crazy when you simply can't win more than back-to-back games at all for the course of an entire month plus span. These things sadly happen. Wardy, in 2000, they made it all the way to the World Series. Son, who let the dogs out, then lost the World Series to the Royal. Yeah, that's not ideal. Yeah, again, those are just rally cries, stuff like that. That doesn't work. Nobody thought the Mets were going to be in this situation. Let's face it, the Brewers are a better team. That's why they're winning now. Both things can be true here. I think any fan that's going to go out of their way to say, like, stop it, that no fan expected this. No, I know actually a good contingent of Mets fans that expected the Mets to have a fantastic summer run after a terrible May. And I recall them vividly, clear as day, from our live call-in shows that we did back in May when the Mets were playing god-awful baseball. And I had many callers and I've had many chatters saying that even with everything down, I have optimism that the Mets are going to rally back and have a great summer and be right nipping out of the heels for postseason play. They're directly in hand with what the initial expectation was for many fans, but how they're faltering right now is the greater problem. This is why it stings so much, is because they're doing it in a fashion that is not only deja vu, but it's just so reminiscent of the same nonsense that sadly us fans have dealt with with for many years on end. Now, here's the beauty about this situation as we now pivot into how the Mets can crack postseason play, because this is not the end of the season. The season isn't over yet. They control their destiny. We got tomorrow's game. Then you, of course, have Monday should the Mets have to play both those doubleheader games. Now that the Mets have officially lost the series, the Diamondbacks are on the brink, fingers crossed, knock on wood, should they lose their series, so at least losing 2 out of 3 against the San Diego Padres, and the Atlanta Braves have already secured their series victory against the Royals. These are a couple outcomes that the Mets could find themselves happening where they could avoid the doubleheader. And this is what needs to happen, everybody. It is as follows. There are 3 routes in which the Mets can still make sure, actually 2 routes, not even 3. There are just 2 routes that the Mets can have where they avoid the doubleheader on Monday, and it's as follows. They have to secure that salvage of a victory tomorrow on Sunday, so they won 1 out of 3 against the Brewers. The Diamondbacks need to be swept by the Padres, so even if the Diamondbacks lose tonight, you need to sweep tomorrow still, and then you need the Atlanta Braves to either A, sweep the Royals, or B, win 2 out of 3. If either of those scenarios happen tomorrow, the Mets will thankfully avoid the doubleheader. They have the tiebreaker on the D-backs, and so do the Atlanta Braves, and that is all the Mets are going to need to find themselves in postseason play. Now, if that does not happen, if the Diamondbacks are not swept and they win at least 1 game, then that completely changes everything. If the Diamondbacks win at least 1 game, the Mets can't avoid the doubleheader. They will have to face the doubleheader. Then that situation, they're going to need either a split or a series sweep this Monday to crack postseason play. So those are your latest scenarios, everybody. I will reiterate it one more time. I'm going to be, yeah, I know, trust me, no one's happy about the doubleheader at all. But one more time, everybody, this is how the Mets can avoid the doubleheader. Should they already lost their series. So if the Mets just win their game tomorrow, if the Diamondbacks are swept tomorrow and the Braves either sweep the Royals, or if they lose, if the Braves win or lose tomorrow and the D-backs lose and the Mets win, they will avoid the doubleheader on Monday. So there's 2 scenarios left. Mind you, out of the list of scenarios I'm currently looking at from just a couple of days ago and how the Mets could crack postseason play, I'm currently looking at a list of at least 70. 70. I'm not joking. I'll prove it. I'll show you guys right now in case you don't believe me for whatever reason, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but in case you don't. But look at this list, guys. This is cut off. It's not even showing the whole thing on screen right now. We're looking at around like 70 scenarios or so for the Mets' path to playoffs. Now we're down to 2 to avoid that doubleheader Monday. Can the Mets still make playoffs with the doubleheader on Monday? Yes, but there's just a lot more uphill battle. Then you're going to have to face Chris Sale and Schwallenbach, or at least one of the 2. Just things that you want to avoid if you're a Mets fan that sadly we're not going to be able to deal with anymore. Brian, no need to self-deflect like that, my friend. My goodness, you want to talk about dirty? Step right up and meet Hotlanta. My goodness, my God, my gracious. We want to start this weekend, buddy. How's your sister doing? Like, we could go down this list all we want. I'll leave it there. I'm gonna keep things PG. But you guys, I have a feeling, know where I was gonna go with that one. You're gonna dish it. It's gonna come back right back at you. And I have no problem with that. I enjoy the discourse in the chat, especially when you guys love to talk shit sometimes when I feel like talking shit back. Let's see. Braves likely won't use the top guy. Not true at all. Not true at all. So here's the thing. The Braves are completely slotted to have Chris Sale and Schwallenbach pitch Monday. This was part of the plan. Now, if the Braves need to secure just 1 victory, then they may not need to utilize both, because if just 1 game has the Mets lose, they're out of playoffs, and that's that. But how the Braves currently orchestrated things, they banked on utilizing Chris Sale and solely an elimination game. Now the Braves are not going to need to utilize Chris Sale until earliest Monday, if not the beginning of postseason play. They have set themselves up beautifully in this situation. Now, as we look at the Arizona Diamondbacks right now, as we currently look in the bottom of the 9th, there is 1 on at third base with 2 outs for Eugenio Suarez, who's over 3 on the day. So we'll see what happens there in a second. Let's see. Let's go, Dante. You've been a great supporter. I'm not going to complain there. Let's see here. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets, with a lot of emojis that look like a poor man's grimace. Those little purple emojis in the chat, Jamie. I appreciate you chiming in. Let's see. The Mets can clinch a playoff spot on Sunday, folks. It has been announced. Yes, you heard that correctly. The San Diego Padres just defeated the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Mets can still clinch tomorrow. What the Mets need to do to clinch tomorrow, everybody, I will reiterate it one more time. They need to win Sunday. They need the Diamondbacks to be swept, and they need the Braves to either win or lose. So that's all the Mets need. Control your destiny. Take your series finale against the Brewers. The San Diego Padres need to help the Mets here, which is exactly why it probably won't happen because, of course, God forbid, why would something go in the Mets' way when it comes to something like this? But that is what they need. They can still clinch playoffs tomorrow. God willing, that finds itself happening. So cue the bells, baby. Cue Slam Diego as they now find themselves a series victory over the Arizona Diamondbacks. And this is not live updated yet, but just to reiterate once more, folks, before we get out of here, yes, the Mets right now are back to being tied with Arizona. The Atlanta Braves have a game on them, but that's okay. It really is a non-factor right now. Control your destiny tomorrow. All the past 24 hours means nothing if the Mets do what they need to do tomorrow and the Diamondbacks continue to falter and the Braves literally, again, it doesn't matter if they win or lose as long as the Diamondbacks lose and the Mets win. So that is the latest scenario, everybody. That is what I have for each and every one of you. And I greatly appreciate you all that took the time to watch live on our replay. I really appreciate the fact that in a night where I didn't really scream my head off at all, peak concurrent viewership greater than yesterday, too, funny enough. I'm not shocked by it. I know that there's a contingent of fans that love me for being open and honest with my emotion. I know that there are others that, even though they know I'm being genuine, don't like how hot-headed I can be. And I understand that there is a select taste on the palette for something like that. So just thank you. Simply put, I really appreciate you guys with the viewership, with the donations, with the likes, and just having this great discourse back and forth in the live show tonight. So Mets control their destiny. We'll see what happens this Sunday, everybody. David Pearson is on the bump with his biggest start of his effing life. We'll see if he can give the Mets anything better than what they got in Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, and Jose Quintana stepping right the hell up and giving the Mets nothing more than 4.1 innings of work that we got from Quintana today. Absolutely horrendous with the length. Absolutely horrendous offense. Control your destiny. Change the narrative. Get your head out of your ass, and please give us something to be excited about before everything is said and done. That'll do it for your guy, Wardy. Thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate that. Let's see this. I love when you are uber hyperactive. Yes, that is true. When I'm off, there's definitely a difference between the two. Have a fantastic night, everybody. I love you all to death, and I will see you all tomorrow for likely pre- and post-game coverage. Until then, have a great one, folks. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets. Peace out.